Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where six mates unpack three topics over a new drink each week. Fuck it, just go with that. We'll fix it if it's.
Well, it's recording.
Okay.
So we don't need to panic.
No, because what I wanted to have today was pineapple rum and soda with a bit of orange and get ice all over the friggin' table. But hey, we'll get over that out.
You can tell who the bartender is here.
Pineapple rum used to be like a delicacy in the 19th century in England.
Oh.
Yeah, this stuff's legit.
I've actually had that.
Yeah.
I thought you'd mixed it with pineapple, it makes sense.
No. So this is the way they make this is they
Pineapple plantation.
yeah, so they macerate rum with pineapple, and then they also macerate a different aged rum with the pineapple skin, and then they distill that, and then they blend those together and age them again.
Can you explain what macerate is?
It's just when you stick it, like if
You
you
mix it together, or
you just
sort of-
let it sit in the liquid,
Oh, okay.
and it extracts the flavour, or like, and you can heat it up, or you can do it at.
One of those is an old fashioned, it's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, amazing. So anyway, it's made in conjunction with like a super cocktail historian guru, David Wondrich. And I thought for number one drink of the Simple Minds, we'd
You
start with that
haven't
one.
drunk this yet?
No, I haven't.
Has anyone had it?
It's-
You had.
No, I haven't
You
had
had
it.
pineapple rum, man.
What's it
Plantation,
called?
plantation
Sexy.
pineapple.
It's very, very nice.
You
And
know,
it's
when,
got a
I,
sexy bottle.
when I read your drink proposal, I read it as rum and pineapple, as pineapple being the mixer
Yeah.
with the soda.
Oh, no.
That's why when I drank it, I'm thinking, hang on, this doesn't even look like pineapple.
No.
So it's just playing games with me.
No. You should try it neat.
Yeah, I have. I've had it as an old fashioned.
Yeah.
What's the name? Is there a name?
It's called Plantation. Is the
Okay,
brand.
so there's not like a
Yeah.
special cocktail name for the mix. Anything. It's
No,
we're
this is just
having
rum and
the-
soda
just
with
rum
some
and soda.
orange. Yeah.
It's very summery.
So look,
Summary.
Cheers, gents.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ding, ding, ding.
Just watch the
my
equipment there,
arms
folks.
like that long.
Much better than plastic.
Yeah.
It's called rum.
I couldn't do
It's a
plastic
rum,
again.
yeah.
It's got
With
a
all due respect,
whiskey kind of
Yeah.
flavour to it.
That'd
like
be the.
we deserve to drink at least
Cask?
glass. Alright?
I mean,
Sorry.
rum.
We
do
do
deserve
deserve glass.
Plantation.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at crystal yet.
So anyway, who's the first person with the topic today?
Are we good? Are we rolling here, are we?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we can call that an intro if you like, but all right, let's do this. So I've got the first topic or point of discussion today. Phones on silent, everyone. So look, one of the prerequisites around, I guess, this podcast and us catching up before that was to have read the book The Alchemist. And I guess the discussion, or what I wanted to just quickly ask the question is, how did you first come across the book? Because we all have come across it in different ways, and sort of what did it mean to you at the time? So the way I actually discovered it randomly was a YouTube video, don't know how I got there or how I was watching it, of Will Smith being interviewed, and he was actually talking about it being his favourite book. And I think I might have even just jumped on YouTube, I think, at the time and sort of grabbed the audio and listened through it. And I just loved it. This was probably 3 years ago, I suppose now.
I saw that too.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool. But at the time, I guess I didn't have as much, as probably as a business owner, entrepreneur, whatever I want to call myself, didn't have as much of a network at the time. And I think I was going through some ups and downs, as had been pretty common for me at that point, through business, but I found that it just really solidified for me to just keep focusing on the path that I'm on, that I know, that I believe in, rather than sort of making any quick decisions to change my path back to what perhaps might be the norm or what's expected for me. So, even if I was having a tough time in business, it just told me I knew that was my path, and I've sort of loved the book ever since. I've listened to it and read it many times, and it was one book. I've read many books, but it was one book that just really stood out. I've gifted it to people, and it just I wouldn't say it changed my life, so to speak, but it just helped me, center me on what I believed. So yeah, so how did the book come into your hands, I guess, was the first question, or what did it sort of mean to you at the time? Hader?
I'll take the lead on that. I guess
We did ask you.
I'll sing about it anyway. For me, the book came to me through a good friend of mine called Conrad Francis, who's sitting opposite us. And he just kind of thought it would be a good book to for me to read where I was in my journey, and it was quite good for me because it really instilled into me was the focus. And it's amazing how many times you read the book, you can get something different out of it each time. Like, the first time I read it, what would it be, about 4 years ago? When did we read it first? 4 or 5 years ago?
4 5.
Yeah, I reread it probably about 6 months ago because we kept talking about it at breakfast, and I took a whole heap of different meanings out of it. But the very first time I did read it, it really just it grew on me about focus and knowing your legend and focusing on that and just going for it and believing in yourself, and that sort of really stuck with me for that period of time. So I'm forever thankful.
Conrad's your Will Smith.
Yeah, kind of. He's kind of. Hey, Will Smith's actually older than you.
Only a touch. He has a passion
49.
He has a passion for Rottweilers like I do too. So
And kite flying too.
did he?
No, I don't know. But anyway, I'll pass over to you, Justin.
I'm a bit of a dancer.
Dancer. I was actually watching Pursuit of Happiness the other week.
Great movie.
Yeah, and I was thinking, maybe a skinny version of Conrad. A few moments.
That's a very true movie, but I reckon that's a whole other topic.
That would be another topic. Yeah,
It's a whole week.
The Alchemist. Well, I mean, it was only introduced to me because of, I guess, the group that we're in and sitting in this, from this room. And I think
You hadn't read it before then?
I hadn't read it,
Oh,
never
okay.
heard about it.
How'd you get into the group?
I was the same.
How'd I get in? Good question. I don't know. Wiggled my way in. Just slipped through the cracks. And I think I was introduced to it late last year, probably only 14 months ago. And it was through a period when I was going through some real crazy personal, growth and searching. And it was one of the first books for me that I've never been a big reader. In the last 18 months, I've been reading a lot. It was weird because I was also traveling to Bali at the same time on the plane, and this was the first time I'd ever read a book where I could not put it down. I was hooked to it. It was so bizarre. On the plane, the whole flight back from Bali to here, I read the whole flight and pretty much finished the book. And I've never done that before. I think at the time, it's just one of those stories where I think you could get so much out of it. If I had read it even 6 months prior to when I did, I would have just been like, what is this? And I'd be super keen to read it again now of where I am. And so, it's a little bit hard to put into words what you get out of it, I think. And it has been 12 months since I've sat on it. I just remember at the time thinking, this is insane. And Marco's sitting next to me, and I don't know if we read it at the same time or I was before you, similar. Yeah. And we were just both pinging off it. This is, whoa.
You get so much out of it where it applies to you right that very second that you are at. And because you can go, peaks and valleys, it changes all the time, and each time you read it or each time you revisit it, you get something so different out of it because your mindset is so different at that point.
Yeah, different characters in it as well. It's not just the boy's journey; it's the people he meets, the regrets some of the people have, that sort of stuff.
And I think it's about the journey, because at the time, there's a lot of focus on achieving things. And we had this conversation the other day, actually, which was interesting. And a lot of we do these days is trying to achieve X or Y. And I think actually I was reading this up shortly after a period when I had achieved my first $1 million in business. And I was kind of unfulfilled. And I was I reached it, now what? And so this was a few months after, and it allowed you to go, it's a really great introduction of trying to learn how to enjoy the journey rather than the destination. I think that was one of the big key takeaways from the book for me. Actually, I think it's well overdue for me to give another read.
Yeah, I'm just thinking right now, I'm going to read it again this weekend. But I'm just thinking, I just remember that it's that journey, right? And that's what hit back to me, and why I guess I raised it, is at the time, I just remember feeling, even though I was in a fairly isolated space, I guess, which sometimes we are when we're doing our own thing, and many people around us are doing things very differently. It's just that journey is. It's all about being on the road that you believe you should be on, and it doesn't really matter about the destination or how far that is or what. So that's what it felt to me anyway. And you're there and you're doing that for a reason, and that's that critical point. It's about that point, not the destination. Hey, so what about you, Marco?
Well, I'm just thinking. One, I should read it again for two reasons. One, because I'm like, I don't think we've given context on what the structure of the story is for anyone listening that hasn't read it.
No, they just need to go. They just need to go read it right
I
now.
think they do.
If
But
you haven't-
essentially, like, how would you summarise it in 2-3 sentences?
Well, here, what I'll do is I'll pass you a copy of the book, and if you want to read out the blurb in the front cover,
It's a fable, isn't it? It's a
Yeah.
story.
Paulo Coelho's enchanting novel has inspired a devoted following around the world. This story, dazzling in its powerful simplicity and soul-stirring wisdom, is about an Andalusian shepherd boy named Santiago who travels from his homeland in Spain to the Egyptian desert in search of a treasure buried near the pyramids. Along the way, he meets a gypsy woman, a man who calls himself the king, and an alchemist, all of whom point Santiago in the direction of his quest. No one knows what the treasure is, or if Santiago will be able to surmount the obstacles in his path. But what starts out as a journey to find worldly goods turns into a discovery of the treasure found within. Lush, evocative, and deeply humane. And I should also add the audiobook is read by the guy that does the voice for Scar in The Lion King, so I've just legit awesome.
we'll link it up.
The story of Santiago is an eternal testament to the transforming power of our dreams and the importance of listening to our hearts. And I think that last bit is the one that has the message that I got from the first time that I read it was just what do you naturally gravitate towards, and like that is going to fuel you to do more in that space, not external kind of motivators. And that's yeah.
It's connecting with your inside, your intuition, and
Yeah.
your heart, and what it tells you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Mike?
Yeah, The Alchemist, I think listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast. I'd heard about The Alchemist before. I knew of the book. But I think it was I can't remember who it was he was interviewing, but they mentioned The Alchemist because he obviously asked them a lot of the times, which books do you give people? I'm sure it was somebody had said The Alchemist. And I didn't read it first. I listened to it. I had the audio book, Jeremy Irons. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
One of the best audiobooks you'll ever listen to.
Yeah.
His voice with it is just absolutely perfect. And I just loved just how easy it was. And I did read it after that. I just found it was just such an easy story to listen to and to read.
Mm.
And I think it's all about picking up.
Conrad taking a selfie.
I think it's
Picking
all,
up like chicks or?
not picking up things. No. It's not just about the destination or the journey. It's about looking around you at any given stage and sort of going with a gut feeling. Gut feeling is a massive part of it.
Yeah.
Picking up something and going, that's telling me something, and going that direction, rather than being sort of on a path of being told by your dad that you've got to do this or by this person to do that. It's sort of finding your own way through life and through just little bits of meaning that are around you all the time that you don't pick up on. So, an amazing book. It's funny that it's become the clubs, or the breakfast clubs. Bible, so to speak. It's an amazing, and actually the author as well, Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
And on Tim Ferriss show as well, had an amazing podcast with him, a couple of hours. If you ever think about writing a book or whatever, but his stories are amazing as well. So
Awesome. And lucky last.
Oh
man.
I'll do this.
Just a
I'll do this a really great. I'll do somebody a massive grave injustice at the moment because I cannot remember who told me to read this book. So this is gonna drive me insane for a couple of days until I can figure it out. But it would have to be at least 5, maybe even 6 years ago, Trev. I don't know. I mean, it was one of the early books I did read when I started to question things in my life. And at the time, probably probably right at the start of the inspired money journey, where I really was just at that bottom, and was had to give up the attachment to things, as we were talking about, Justin, and just focus on the journey, because the destination, in my respect and in what you just read, is non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Because of where your life takes you, that's a moving target. And I think the people that you meet, as Santiago met, and the stories they tell you, all shape your future anyway. Which is why, which leads into that other piece of thing that wisdom that I hang on to, that proximity piece. The people around you, they're not to necessarily hang on every word they say, but allow yourself to be caught up in the flow a little bit sometimes. It's it means a lot to me. I've read it once. I've listened to it once. I do have to get back to it at some stage. Like everything, as you grow and as you experience life, everything that you have read in the past does open up other opportunities for you to learn through it as well. So, interesting question.
Awesome.
But yeah, I feel sorry for the person that introduced you to it.
You have to go back to the calendar and try and work it out.
Yeah, I know.
I said 3 or 4 years, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
how far back it really was,
Well, because I know our business started about 7 years ago, so it would have been really, really near that start. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm really shocked at how fast we actually smashed through that question. And around we completely honest.
We're
It's
good back
about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, but I just thought we'd just get out of control, which we probably can and will. But I think you've got the honours of the next question or the next discussion point.
You want to go? I don't care.
Oh, let's start to Mike.
Hang on, there's just some facts on that book, right? 65 million copies. Spent 315 weeks in the New York Bestseller Times #1 spot, translated in 80 different languages, and holds a record for the Guinness Book of World Records most translated book.
Wow. Oh, most translated book.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you would think the Bible would be up there somewhere, but this is the record of. And I can't play this to my mum because she cannot know that I compare this to the Bible.
That's all right. We'll send her the tape. We'll put it on a cassette. Can we do that?
She does not even know.
CD or are we going back?
Son?
Are we going back to record?
Put it in the oven.
We're moving into urban stakes. I think we can get a record made if that helps.
So pretty big numbers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, insane.
It's my Bible.
Huge.
It's your Bible. Must be a few people's Bibles, Anyway, so Mike.
Well, I thought I was going to be doing it last.
I don't mind, Mike.
No, because I think maybe this topic is probably a good one to finish off on.
I don't mind, mate.
But I'll go ahead.
Come on, Conrad.
We've got 10 minutes, and this is again going along the lines of the question I asked Gary Vee. It's a philosophical type question, and I have been doing a lot of this stuff in the last year. And I'm wondering if I'm wondering if you guys, how in depth you think about your life on a day-to-day basis, and especially the suffering in life. And if you accept suffering in life, if you understand it as an intrinsic part of life, and what your thoughts are on that, and if you if you ever think that, look around and go, shit, life is actually really, really hard all the time. And it doesn't change. It's a constant not a constant battle, but Buddhism is very close to this. And it was a philosopher called Schopenhauer who's really interesting guy, atheist, who era or 18 or 17 late 1700s or 1800s, I can't remember, a couple hundred years.
It's important. The only thing I say why era, because it's important the context in their mind space.
Well, he was one of the first sort of Western philosophers to come to the conclusion with philosophy that the Eastern guys had it right all along. The Buddhists. Yeah. And the Buddhists think about suffering a lot, and you think of Buddhism being all this calm, sort of tranquil people. But they're so tranquil because they have come to terms with the fact that life is really hard. And Schopenhauer sort of looked at life as a constant striving for something.
This is a pretty big piece, mate.
That's what I'm saying.
Not to put a spanner in the works here. I think it was either Gary Vee or Tony Robbins, something I was listening to the other day, and they brought up about the word about passion. And the Latin meaning of passion is to suffer.
Yeah, so I put that on my...
to suffer is something that you love. So to flip that on its head, you know, like, I technically suffer every day.
The Latin word is passo.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the origin of the word.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So you're suffering by doing your passion.
Yeah,
You know, it allows you to suffer through something that you love.
Yeah.
That's why it is your passion.
And it's your perception of what that is, I suppose. You know, you can take it, and that's where I think most of the population maybe take life as, when they say suffering, they actually feel it as suffering as something negative, and they're heading down, down, down.
Sorry, it's party.
Party.
P-A-T-I,
Thank you.
which is the Latin origin word.
There you go. Sorry, MD.
But suffering is actually what's keeping you going, what you're striving towards. You always, and I think this is in Western society, we're always striving for something, the next thing.
Yeah.
We're always like the next car, the next house, the next job, the next day, the next meal you're going to have. And that's why it's constant, because we're always striving. That's where Buddhism comes in, and monks. The only reason they no longer suffer is because they sit in the hill by themselves.
But they stay present.
They stay present, yeah. And they don't let life affect them that way. So
I
That's what I was saying yesterday, right? An opportunity just to stay present somewhere.
Yeah.
and that's it. You aim
That's a big question.
You aim to be monk-like.
So
you don't have to do it over there, right? You can stay present anywhere. You got to learn
Sure,
to be
100%.
present.
You've got monks here, 100%.
So what's the question?
The question is, how, if you ever even think about it on a daily basis in regards to, suffering and hardship,
Every
just
day.
as being
Okay.
part
Yes.
of
And
life,
can you
and accepting that.
Yes, and how do you do it?
I do it by just thinking about it, like sort of actually going, okay, your life is
What do
hard.
you think about? Like, because for me, like if I listen to life is hard, I go, actually be grateful and
And that's exactly doing things like gratitude and that's why gratitude works so well, because you look on the positive side. But even though the suffering will never stop or hardship won't stop, there are ways of changing your perception on a daily basis through meditation, which is monk-like. Through, as you said, gratitude works amazingly well for that sort of thing.
Can I put some context on that? So suffering doesn't mean you have to suffer. Thinking about it.
Yeah, okay.
It gives you the bookend.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? And so in your existence, you're not trying to suffer, but you respect suffering exists.
And I think you also acknowledge that in order to have like joy or pleasure, you need suffering.
So through presence, you acknowledge that. So the same saying: without day, you don't have night. The context gives you
yin yang.
the existence, right?
Yeah.
And I guess what exists in the Western world is that we are so busy existing and chasing without being present that we suffer because we aren't present.
Okay.
And I mean, this is a condition I think that humans really only feel. Like animals are on a level where they just live, they just do what they do.
They exist. They
Suffering
hunt, they feed, they do whatever they do. Whatever they need to do right at that moment.
Whereas our self-awareness, self-talk creates the cycle of suffering,
Okay.
which you can't get away from. And this is what I'm sort of getting at, is that there's never a 100% happiness or 100% calm.
I actually don't. I'm not of the belief you can't get away from it.
I think,
But if you have 100% happiness,
you can't.
it just becomes the baseline, and then it's just you have to have sadness to have happiness.
No, you have to appreciate sadness.
Okay.
You don't have to have sadness. You have to know it exists.
I think you have to
Well, I
have
think
felt,
you have to
have
feel
felt
it
sadness.
Do you?
to know that.
Do you? Why do we always try and stop people failing? Why would you use a mentor? Because you don't want to experience failure.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to fail.
Okay.
But the
As
fact
in, you
is,
don't need to suffer.
But you learn.
You have to
that,
appreciate. You can learn, you can learn tactile-wise. You can learn by embracing that and going through that.
Yeah.
But fuck, mate, I don't want any one of you guys to learn what I learned through losing my dad.
Yeah.
But until you have suffered, you can't fully appreciate a lot of it as well. So if someone wraps you in cotton wool and stops you from making all those mistakes, and let's use a business context then. and someone's helped you all the way to the top, you don't necessarily value it and understand. It's the
Sure,
same
okay.
thing,
So that's a different scenario. Now, what you're saying, does value exist without the experience?
yeah.
And contextually, it can. Okay, contextually, it can. But you have to be present to allow it to have value. And that's what the monks and that's what the monks, the Dalai Lama, and those people that allow themselves to be present, they don't suffer. They don't suffer, but they appreciate suffering.
Well, it's about appreciating exactly where you are. Because if you ever try to measure something, that's when I reckon you get undone. So say if you're in a relationship and you tit for tatting, same thing. That's where you start to fight and stuff like that. But when you try to measure happiness and sadness, that's where you really become undone. But if you're just present and you enjoy everything for what it is, you enjoy the lows, you enjoy the highs, that's when you really, I think, appreciate happiness.
Well, it's when you take it beyond the moment, right?
Yeah.
So something bad or something stressful or something happens to you in a period of time, there's a reasonable period of time. It's then whether you
But
attach that emotion.
why is it bad?
It's not bad.
Yeah, I see it as
I think it can be bad to, well, not bad. Bad's the wrong word, but I think there's an element of skill that you can then create around whether you drag something on and pull that emotion through for a long period of time or not, and whether or not that's rational or reasonable, I don't know. But and some people do it differently than others. We've all seen this in many different
But everything's happening for you.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So go on.
I think, just more of like, if I think about suffering, I don't think I ever think about suffering, but as of late, I changed my view on issues or problems.
Yeah.
And so...
Suffering is quite a heavy word, the
Yeah.
word itself.
Yeah.
And
So
so
it creates the dark, right?
Yeah, so lately I journal on gratitude every day. I've done nearly almost every single day for the last 7 or 8 months. And every day.
I know how long it took you to start doing that, though.
Yeah, and one of the most common ones I write is I'm grateful for the challenges I'll be facing today.
Good.
I'm grateful for the problems that I have today.
That's what I wrote about today.
Yeah, and so that's something I don't know whether I acknowledge it or look at it as suffering, but as of the last definitely 12 months, maybe since The Alchemist, from the first thing, I look to the problems of what can I learn from this, what is it showing me, which is through the conversations we've had of like, why is this situation or why is this thing happening for me as opposed to me, and that's a super strong reframe of any conceived bad or negative situation or even positive situation. Why is this happening? What is it showing me? What can I learn? Even if someone is behaving a way that you don't agree with, or they're doing something, how can they teach you to maybe communicate better or whatever it is? So I don't know, that's my take on, I think of problems or issues much differently than what I have.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think about suffering per se, maybe it's just definitions. But
a large percentage of the population though don't think like that at all in regards to gratitude, in regards to looking at their life and sort of being present in it. They are just in the journey of they're existing with whatever it is, they're 9 to 5, they're today to night, watching at night and then to bed, and it's like this.
I want today, not even ending.
And this was actually Schopenhauer talked about like sort of art and philosophy, music, and just general being a philosopher, thinking takes you out of that.
Just to quantify, because we've used the word suffering, so just a definition of that, right? Because I'm massive to get everyone on the same page. The state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship.
Yeah.
Pain, distress,
So we've all been there,
Yeah.
in one shape or
The
form.
dark side. You could call it a million different things.
yeah, pain, stress, hardship.
But it's that dark area. So
But the level of it is based on what you perceive as
100%.
Yeah.
So suffering, like I could stub my toe and think it's the end of the world,
Sure.
but you can lose your dad and think that's the end of the
Yeah.
world. So like our two
It's
very
also whether or not like that's an acute. Like, interestingly, I felt suffering was more of a long-term word or a longer-term word. I don't feel like you're suffering, apart from you're suffering for 10 seconds while your toe was sore and then moved on. Like I think there's a real distinction between that too, and I think that's sort of what I tried to say before. It's like whether you attach to those certain emotions and drag them through or not, and then how quickly can you flip to being grateful for something. Because as we talk about like Justin's point around my problems and my challenges, and I certainly do agree with that. and I try and come at, face the day with that every day. Like, I want big problems, I want to be able to solve them. Doesn't mean when they hit you don't go, whoa, like, that's a big problem. It's how quickly you can turn that, right? And I've had issues that I've been able to turn very fast, and issues that have taken me a year or two.
So do you actually? I don't know who your God is or how you avoid problems, but do you ask for problems?
I like problems.
No, but you ask for problems. So
Do I ask
So when I say ask, do you physically ask to be given a problem?
I don't physically ask, but I think I've created a situation where I'm addicted to those problems coming. Like, I want those problems to solve. I always am looking for a problem to solve, whether it's mine or others, or, I've often, something will happen in a room and everyone's going, oh, something's happened. And I'm like, no, we need to do this, that, this is how we start to overcome it. Like, that's just where my brain goes.
Yeah, but that's exactly where the question comes from. You're saying you're always looking for the problems. The problems are always there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's never not going to be there.
So I'm looking for something to solve, and I guess if something hasn't hit me, I'm looking for someone else's problem to solve.
But in regards to Marco's question, on a day-to-day basis, it's that awareness of feeling hurt or dark or suffering or pain and stopping and assessing it yourself and processing it on a daily basis. That's what you can do to try.
It's super interesting. I like that. I'm going to focus on it more because for me, anytime I go there, I'm like, actually, I'm trying to coach myself out of that and being like, you should be grateful and you have no reason to feel like you're suffering, because genuinely, I can't remember the last time I would say that I suffered, right? Because I've given myself enough perspective that, like, anything that happens in my life,
that's your
I am
step
super
towards
privileged
towards that sort of monk-like state.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
That's
It's not like to be.
No, but I also like
You've never stopped
focusing
yourself.
on it, right? No.
Never had a
I'm a
deadline.
ninja.
Never had a deadline for a video.
God, no. Never had a deadline for a video and I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, great. So that's,
So yes, it was a
good.
man.
I like that.
There's
Let's
a
get
lot
a flick
of
of
stuff coming out of there.
You got anything to add to that, Hayden?
He's a fucking hippie, man.
Well, this is just quick.
Well, there goes the clean language rating right there. So I'm pretty sure we already swore. Right?
We'll
So
sweep that one. I think we said
no,
something
I'm
else.
all good for explicit, eh?
We'll have to change it to explicit on the.
Oh, would we? Sorry.
Nah.
Just quickly to finish off this part about Schopenhauer, this is one of his quotes, alright? Life has no intrinsic worth, but is kept in motion merely by desire and delusion.
Yeah. I actually was talking about this at Orange Sky this morning. I was like, at the end of the day, we manufacture all this meaning anyway, right? Like, we have
this is an orange
constructed- Yeah,
I want to call it an apple.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why I was like,
It's
you know,
all
first question
manufactured.
we might as well ask, what's the meaning of life?
We're done one episode. It's like, it has no meaning. It's all completely random.
And by the way,
Thanks for coming.
Schopenhauer died 72 years old in complete serenity.
Did you ever sit around and really think about that? Like, I even remember
I
as a
don't.
kid trying to imagine, like, what it would be like if there was no Earth, and like I tried to imagine what it would be like with nothing in the universe. Try to like think out, just craziness, like all this stuff and us and what I remember, just random, but trying to close my eyes and try to actually put that to into some form of visualization. I legit remember this. Like, hey. I thought you had to be a weirdo to get onto the show.
I don't call many people weird, mate.
But just for the thought of it, like, you know, why,
I did.
how, like,
I know I did.
you know, what does that really look like? And
I still do, mate.
even now, with us, we've had some discussions around space recently and going to the moon and things like that. But like, that's the type of thing I was thinking about. Like, what is it like out there? If we could even exist out there or somewhere else, and I don't know, just to enjoy like trying to think on. Yeah, that's really weird.
Mate,
I'll move on.
5 minutes outside of my head would be fantastic, let alone getting to the moon, mate.
Can't wait to be on the moon. So that'll be
Conspiracy.
Oh god,
It's going to put us all on watch list.
That'll be next episode. The moon conspiracy.
Alright, you guys that know me know that I love my quotes, and my quotes have given me daily focal points to look at when I journal. I mean, because I've been journaling now for 15, 16 years. So I applaud you, Justin, for your 7 months.
Thanks.
What's the
I'm
meaning of time?
at 4, low key, but yeah.
But it has given the opportunity to reflect. I think that's the biggest thing journaling's given me, right? I mean, we live such busy lives, and I put it down to, and I believe life's a test. That's just what I believe. And if I'm going to step up tomorrow and want to be better than what I did today, how do you do that if you don't reflect? You know, how do you do better on a maths test when you don't look at the answers, when you don't look at the questions again or review them? So I think you get a free hit every time you go through and do that, and that's what journaling's done for me. And then the other part I believe in life is there's nothing new. And strangely enough, it came to you playing a game of golf once when the etiquette of golf has you not walking across other people's lie when you're on the green. You try not to walk across the line of the ball. Yeah. And I was playing Wembley Golf Course one morning, and I accidentally stepped across the line of one of my mates' balls, and he said, "Don't worry about it, that line's been walked across 100,000 times already." And just that line, he didn't know, but I went away with that and think, well, shit, he's not wrong. It's probably near enough to that point in time I changed the way I journal to come back to writing quotes. Because if I'm dealing with a problem, or I'm dealing with a situation, or something's appearing in my life, I'm of the opinion that it's happening for me. Now, it might be happening through me, so that I can find an answer for somebody else. So when I ask you about problems, I do ask for the opportunity to solve other people's situations. Whether that happens, or whether I'm just open to it.
You physically ask?
Yeah, I do.
In the mirror?
No, not in the mirror.
What do you mean by physically asking?
No, well, I mean, I pray. So part of my meditation is prayer, and I ask for God to do His work through me, and if there's things I need to see or things that I need to have an input in, to show them to me in a way that I can actually see them and understand them. Okay. So so for me, it's talking to me to open my vision up, not just being so narrow-minded about me. Mm-hmm. And so when I do that, and then if I allow myself to draw from books and authors and philosophers and anybody that wants to write, because you can't meet all these people. So going through quotes has been, probably my way of connecting with all of that knowledge base out there, and then contextually figuring out when they lived, how they lived, what their life story was, and that's allowed me to acquire the knowledge on the backstory of all those things. So quotes are interesting.
Can we take 2 seconds for you
Sure.
to explain what your journaling kind of process looks like when you do it? What's it look like?
I generally journal twice a day.
Yeah.
So in the morning and in the evening.
Uh-huh.
I don't really have a structure other than these days I just talk to the quote.
I was going to say,
So you've got a bank of quotes that you go look at?
Yeah, I've got over... No. I actually go and search. So I wake up feeling a certain way generally.
Yeah.
And I'll go and search a quote.
Oh, okay.
How did you feel when you woke up this morning after your 82%?
Mate, I was pinging, man. I mean, I was pinging.
It's 4:10 a.m.
I was more pinging.
Zero context on that percentages. We're rating our sleeping quality. Yeah.
He felt really good because he just learned how to use Canva.
I just wanted to be above 80 and I got 82.
So you get a quote by whoever, and you journal on that quote.
On that quote. So
Okay,
I will journal how it presents to me straight away.
Yeah.
And then how it's presented to me through my day.
Yeah, awesome.
And then if it ever presents through the week, because sometimes it does, I will come back and I'll backfill that day.
And then you do your history on the quote. You look back and see the context.
Well, the person more importantly than the quote. So if you can pinpoint when it was released, it was in a book or whatever, then you know that era. But more importantly, the person and understanding them. So I read a lot of wiki.
And that's similar to The Alchemist. Like, I mean, what year do you think The Alchemist is meant to be written in? Like, what? It's timeless, isn't it? I mean, it is timeless.
It is timeless.
But it is a modern tale. It's
I think you're
modern
right.
story.
This is probably a big topic for us all as well, but it's storytelling, right? Because anything you can read now, or anything you can read from 100 years ago, 50 years ago, several hundred years ago, is much. 2,000 years ago is much the same. I mean, there's nothing in economics, in life, that hasn't already existed.
Everything happens in cycles, mate.
Yeah, so it's all that analysis of that. I mean, and there's a lot of, you can go into great financial people that we know that just track what's happened in the past and really dig deep, and they can then predict, in a sense, like many things. And that's just one example. But you're right. The deeper you go, and there's nothing new. And I think that's what's interesting about creating content and storytelling, because a lot of people get caught up in going, oh, it's already been said. Sure it has, but not in your way, not with your story, not with your set of information and circumstances, which might then be
They're telling it through
influential to someone else,
not
telling
to
it
you.
through you. Which
Yeah.
is, so like it's exactly the same as what's written 100 years ago or later, just different innovation, technology, different place in the world. Or whatever that looks like. Universe.
To put a creative spin on that, a lot of people say that to create an original idea, like for a photo, say, or a video or something like that, but then on the flip side, there are no original ideas. It's all about hijacking people and then interpreting it.
Because the idea you've had has been planted in somewhere else.
It's just influence.
Or, yeah, that's right.
It's just influence. So exactly that point, it goes into creativity, it goes into all aspects of life.
Yeah, in music, I think
Yeah.
the 12 bar blues
Yeah.
is effectively like the base of almost. There's almost no new riff in a sense created, because there can't be. There's only limited.
It was weird when I had that epiphany through reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, right? Which is a bit of Stoic philosophy, which is apparently meant to be his journaling. The Roman emperor's journaling from, I think, 150 AD.
On the battlefront.
On the battlefront.
How did he die?
And you...
Do you know how Marcus died?
No, I don't know.
I'll leave you with that one.
Sure.
Moving on.
But moving on, back onto the context of what we're talking about, the stuff that he talks about, the same problems and issues he was facing, and I guess we face in whatever, was the same as what they were facing 2,000 years ago in the Roman forums.
Yeah.
The Roman forums, they were bitching and gossiping about people, about this problem and that problem. I don't have enough money, I'm poor, I'm this.
Don't have enough followers.
Don't have enough followers, disciples. I'm suffering or whatever. And that was a huge epiphany for me of just going, shit, like the exact same problems 2,000 years ago.
So let me bring it back to this quote then, right? So the quote from John Steinbeck, who is a Nobel Prize winner in the field of literature back in 1962.
1962.
Okay.
American?
Steinbeck, yes. Abandon the idea that you are never going to finish.
That's the suffering.
Yeah.
Abandon the idea that you're never going to finish.
Or whether abandon that idea.
So you will finish. You will die.
You never.
That's like,
No, see,
I mean,
yeah.
I think I say that because that's a lot about what I'm thinking at the moment.
It's a statement.
We need you to lead this off, because this is.
Well,
Yeah,
I let it off from the point that I talk about quotes and I come across quotes and you guys know contextually what I'm dealing with.
You're ever going to finish, not never. Sorry, I have.
You're ever going to finish. Yeah,
Okay.
ever.
Oh, I heard
Sorry,
never.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I
We always
heard
said it.
never.
Sorry, I said it. Did I say never?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I was thinking the opposite.
Yeah.
So it was right.
Never.
So
it's pretty
never.
It's pretty similar.
So you're never going to
So
finish.
finish.
Yeah.
The destination will never arrive. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was.
Which
Yes.
which
Yeah.
which
Which
kind
is
of
like death.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
like,
like,
well, okay, you're going to die. Alright.
well, yeah. Mate, you can take meaning from anything, right?
but
It's all made up anyway.
It ties back in with Santiago's journey.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
All about a journey.
We just thought you were talking about death.
Yeah.
No.
Why is it though? Who said it can't be?
But
It could be.
I don't
No,
know.
it can be. Just that was the wording.
We listen to Gary Vee, right? We're all fans of him, and anyone familiar with him. He's most recently come out and said, like, I don't actually want to buy the jet. Everyone knows Gary Vee
he's
wants to buy
changed
the
his tune.
jets. He's changed his tune on that of going, I actually want to try to buy the jets. That's what I actually live for. He's changed that context of that, that's not what he's aiming. He's actually aiming to just try. And the moment he knows that he gets it, which is admitted, he knows he's lost.
But that's what I'm talking about with yesterday's conversation.
Yeah,
Now, at 16 years of age, I said I wanted to retire by the age of 50.
Yeah.
Now, at 37, there's no way in the world was that ever going to look like it was going to happen.
Yeah.
At 45, I can do it now.
But this is the issue. You didn't set a big enough goal effectively.
Well, at 16,
At 16 you did.
16, who the hell didn't think
not
that
for
was
now.
enough?
So like someone, I think I raised a guy to you the other day, Peter Daniels.
Yeah.
And I just remember a couple of things from his stories. One is that he ended up having to set a life goal that was just completely expansive, because otherwise he just kept meeting them and feeling like, what do I do? And that, I think, became, and this is why it's still tied into business, but how much money can I give away in my life? And how much can I, like, so then he also gave his time, but he wanted to push how much money he could give away. That way he had to focus on making money to be able to give as much as he possibly could away. The other thing he did in his stories, and maybe you should catch this somewhere, is that I think he even said he didn't tell his wife, but at one point he gave almost everything he had away, mortgaged everything out, that he had all his assets, because he needed some challenge back, because he got to this point where he'd eclipsed anything beyond his wildest dreams, and it wasn't a challenge to him, so he gave it all away to charity to restart the engine to be able to go and do it. So rather than maybe waiting for it to be taken from you, actually force that situation out, which is interesting.
It is interesting, but that's...
It's interesting how it ties back to even the Alchemist and the suffering question. So the three questions have tied in really well from today's...
This relates to what I mentioned at Brekkie Club yesterday, which is just, that podcast with Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins is talking about Robin Williams having exceeded his vision, right? He set out to do, he was a brilliant, he got told he'd never be a TV actor. He went out and put out.
I think I heard Tony talk about this at Salesforce.
Maybe it was a Salesforce one. But
That's a great.
But then he set a new goal for, I'm going to do comedy, and then he smashed comedy. So he's like, all right, I'm going to be the greatest drummer. He smashed drama, and kept exceeding all these goals to a point where he committed suicide because he just exceeded his vision, right? So I think some people do, and it leads to really dark places, and you have to have the ability to repeg at something bigger, right?
But that draws back to the point about enjoying the journey as well. Because if you don't enjoy the journey of what you're doing, then when you get to the end goal, it's sort of you're not fulfilled because you haven't enjoyed what you're doing to that point. But yes, you do have to create different goals.
Well, that's why if you push that goal high enough, right? So same as Gary's. Going back to your point of Gary's goal, it's like the goal almost shouldn't be achieved, which is what he wanted to do, because he only wanted the journey.
But if you abandon the idea that you're ever going to finish, what we're saying is that the destination's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Finishing doesn't matter.
But is it a balance between you have to have the end, so you have to know what that looks like, so you have to have a star to lead towards, because otherwise there's no in between.
Well, how I see that is not even worrying about whatever star is if it's never going to finish, what is it that you want to be doing?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, of like, if you don't have that, how do you know what path to necessarily follow? You could just go off a 1,000 tangents and 1,000 things. Do you actually have to have a combination of both?
But that
do you understand what I'm saying?
Goal's too short as well.
Because
you end up playing down here too much if you haven't got a really big goal.
If you take Gary, which I referenced, if he didn't have that, would he be doing what he's doing? Or would he just be on tangents, doing other things randomly? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? You have to have still a large vision and a large ambition, but you also have to enjoy the journey as well. Like with maybe Robin's scenario, is that, maybe it's another question for another day, but it's like the yin yang. You can't have this without that. You can't have that without this. So you can't have the vision and enjoy the journey. You can't enjoy the journey without the vision.
Well, answer me this then. What's the goal of a monk?
Holy shit! I had this question. I had this at on shift this morning.
What?
One
To
lady,
exist?
no, seriously. But I'm intrigued, right? Because I got a lady this morning asked me. I was like, oh, if I died or if I just started all over again, I'd go be a Shaolin monk and do kung fu and meditate. It'd be fucking awesome, right?
That'd be perfect.
Like, how sick would that be? And she's like, yeah, but why? And I was like, I don't know. You could do backflips and also achieve self-enlightenment, right? And she's like, yeah, but once you get to self-enlightenment, what are you going to do?
Self-enlightenment is not the destination.
And what's the outcome?
It's the outcome of
trying to
presence.
do that now.
Okay, but I'm super happy with what I'm doing right now. I was just putting a hypothetical out there.
Yeah.
But it stumped me because I was like, I don't know, it's just a nice journey to go on. I don't need to know what I'm going to do when I'm there. It's such a lofty goal that I enjoy learning about myself, but
that's still a goal, right? So that's what I'm saying. That's still a vision, right? That's still a vision. That's still the path you would then follow. So if self-intrinsic enlightenment is that vision, then so be it. It's still not the destination. That's what I'm saying. Like, is it potentially a balance between? You have to have. They don't exist. They don't exist without each other.
Yeah.
So they say monks accept the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So when you take the covenant or the word suffering through those three vows, that's probably leaving in a space of.
Monks step away from, I suppose, the intrinsic being a human
Yeah.
being. They step away from being human to a degree because they step out of that and become kind of just part of everything. It's not you're not a person, you're not a self. And I don't think anybody has ever reached that, be it a Buddha or be it Buddha or whatever. But
Dalai Lama.
yeah, it's pretty calm dude, that guy.
He's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yes.
It's a good question. It's interesting.
I think there are
But
many levels.
it's absolutely stuffy. And I couldn't explain to her it's just about the journey, not about what you're going to do once you get there. I just couldn't explain that.
So why do you need to have an all-ending goal to enjoy the journey as well? It's
Yeah.
like a monk, I'm sure they might not have an all-ending goal, but are still one
But they have an afterlife too, right?
Well,
I
that's
think
the
cool part.
if that's what they believe
I
in.
think
yeah.
a vision, I guess in my reference, is not necessarily a goal. It's something to necessarily just strive for.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that is a goal. But yeah, it's kind of like what the Alchemist, the only reason he went on the journey is because he had a vision of some sort, right?
That's what he started.
Yeah, that's where he started.
So it's what he started. It's not where he ended up.
Yeah.
And it's also not prescriptive, right? It's just
No.
if you wanna live your life by trying to get to something, in my view, as long as you're enjoying the journey.
Well, you have to enjoy the journey, yeah.
Well, as long as you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Like, what I wrote on the inside cover to my bro when I gave him this book was, man, like, finding your personal legend and all that, that's great. But, like, for me, what's important is if you're enjoying the journey, like, right now. Yeah?
That's what I put in.
That's what I
Enjoy the
took.
journey.
Yeah. And so, you don't, and you can also use it. It's just what fuels you, right?
Yeah. And that's Schopenhauer talks about humans' will to life. That is what all humans do, is this constant striving for the next thing.
Yeah.
That's what makes us human, this constant wanting. And it's how you deal with that, where you put yourself in between that counts.
That will end us today. Thank you for tuning in to Simple Minds with these 5 good-looking fellas. We'll catch you next time.